Now we come to one of the most troublesome stories in all of biblical literature. That's chapter 22. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. And God said, take your son, your only son, the one that you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah, and there I want you to offer him up as a sacrifice on one of the hills that I will say to you, I will point out to you. That's quite a request. Abraham arose in the morning, and he saddled his donkey, and he took his 2 servants with him, and Isaac his son. And he split wood for a sacrifice. And he came and he went towards the place. He arose and went to the place where God told him to go. On the 3rd day, Abraham raised his eyes and he saw the place at a distance. And Abraham said to his servants, you stay here with the donkey, and I and my boy will continue walking up to that place. And there we will bow down and we will return to you. And Abraham took the wood of the sacrifice, and he gave it to his son Isaac to carry. And he in his hand carried the fire and the slaughtering knife. And the 2 of them walked together. So Isaac said to his father, and he said, Father, and Abraham said, yes, my son. He said, look, I see the fire and the wood, but where is the sheep for the sacrifice? So Abraham said, God will provide a sheep as a sacrifice, my son. And the 2 of them walked together. And they came to the place which God had told him. And there Abraham built the altar, and he arranged the wood, and he bound up his son Isaac, and he put him on top of the altar, on top of the wood. And Abraham stretched out his hand, and he took the blade to slaughter his son. And an angel of God called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here I am. And he said, do not stretch your hand towards the boy and don't do anything to him, because I know now that you fear the Lord, you fear God, and you would not withhold your only son from me. And Abraham raised his eyes and he saw a ram caught in a bush by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up as a sacrifice instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place, God will see, Adonai Yireh, concerning which it is said at this time, Bahar Adonai Yireh, in the mountain of the Lord it will be seen. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, I swear, says the Lord, because you have done this thing, and you would not withhold your son, your only son, I will bless you, and I will increase your seed, and make them as numerous as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is on the shores of the sea. And your children, your descendants, will inherit the cities of their enemies. And all the nations of the earth will be blessed by you and by your seed, because you have listened to my voice. And Abraham returned to his boys, to his servants, and they got up and they went together to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt in Beersheba. Well, as you know, the story of the sacrifice of Isaac is one of the most problematic stories and famous stories. And on the other hand, it's interesting how both Christians and Jews derive from it the significance of Abraham. The Christians say Abraham was the man of faith. God told him to do something, he did it, regardless of the circumstances and the conditions. To the Jews, it represents God saving at the last minute. And that theme is interesting because it appears again and again. In the days of the Second Temple, especially after the Greek invasion, Jews began to paint and to sculpt. And some of the paintings that the Jews made are most remarkable, excellent paintings. Some of the mosaics are works of art, great works of art. And there are a lot of beautiful mosaics which were discovered in the land of Israel. In all of these scenes where they have a lot of stories, they always have the story of Isaac and the intended sacrifice as one of the central themes. And you always see the same thing. You see Abraham, Isaac, the altar, putting the child on the altar, and then the hand of God comes down from heaven to stop him. And it appears in many of them because evidently this was some kind of theme which the people of Israel felt, yes, we get into a jam or we get into a terrible situation. At the last minute, God came and saved us because of Abraham's faith in God. There's another interpretation of this story, and that is that it was intended to show Abraham that this is what God did not want. Now, I'll tell you what I mean by that. In the land of Canaan, in the land of Canaan, human sacrifice was not uncommon. We know this from Canaanite writings, we know it from Israelite writings, we know it from Roman writings, that the Canaanites did offer human sacrifice. And they used to sacrifice children. And there are several scenes, I think there are 2 scenes in the Bible where it says this king, when he felt that he was in terrible, terrible trouble, in order to avoid disaster, sacrificed his son. Also, among the Canaanites, we find that there are quite a number of immolations and self-sacrifices. Suicide is where a man will commit suicide at a moment of great danger or great fear, or perhaps a sense of hopelessness. So the idea of human sacrifice was not foreign to the land of Canaan. Abraham is living in the land of Canaan. And God tells him, I want you to offer your son as a sacrifice. Perhaps at a certain moment, Abraham might have said, this is done. This is done. And then at the moment where he's ready to do it, God tells him, no, I don't want you to do this. And then the Torah repeats time and time again, don't do human sacrifice. Don't ever throw a child into the Moloch, which is the great oven of the Moloch god of the Canaanites. Don't do this, again and again. So this might have been a kind of object lesson saying Abraham is willing to obey God because it's not that uncommon in the world, and so in the world in which he lived. And then God tells him not to.